Well, hello, folks. Welcome in. Chris here for Indaba Africa. Another stray voltage scene. Just touching base. We're not too far off from our live concert, the debut album from Giselle, an exciting new South African, well, Namibian singer, who will be coming on with her debut concert Friday evening in just a short while, about an hour and a half from now. Actually, that's 7 p.m. in Johannesburg time. It'll be 1 o'clock in the afternoon here in the U.S. About 90 minutes away, 95 minutes away from the live stream with Giselle. So, hey, Jacques, welcome aboard. Good to see you. Just came on to do a quick little update, just touch on some bases. This is a stray voltage scene. So I just wanted to go on and get a chance to... hang on a second. I got some stupid ads here.
Liberty Buchanan.
Liberty Buchanan. I love that commercial. Put that on mute. Trying to play some music here, not working out quite the way I intended it to. Skip the ads. You gotta love YouTube. There we go. So I'll play that in the background. This is Giselle from her song Sudvest, which is about Namibia, playing in the background. So here we are. Today is Friday, May 8th, 2020. And you're tuned in to Stray Voltage. It's Chris Wyatt's live stream, impromptu live stream, talking about events. Hey, there we go. There's our Ranger friend on board. Welcome there. Well, this will be a short one. I expect this one to go for about 40 minutes, maybe 45 at most. I have to get off after the top of the hour so that I can go on to my PC and set up the stream for Giselle's concert. So let me see. So for those unfamiliar with Giselle or who've missed my promotions for this is Giselle. There you go. She'll be on the program for a free live concert to fill your Friday evening if you're in South Africa, your Friday afternoon here in the U.S. So that's. Hey, Anton, I'm doing quite well, thank you. I'm excited. We've got the concert coming up here in about an hour and a half. That's why I popped on very quickly for a live stream, my Stray Voltage. Just want to touch base. I hope that folks are able to tune in for the concert. Giselle's an interesting singer. She's I didn't know this, but I found this out a couple days ago. She's performed with Steve Hofmeyer live, and I did also discover this. She's childhood best pals with Adam Levine's wife. That's right, Beate Prinsloo. That's Adam Levine from Maroon 5, his wife. And Giselle grew up together in Grootfontein in Namibia, and they're best of friends. They're school time chums, pals. Interesting, small world. Everyone always talks about those 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. Well, if you do it, sometimes you're not that far removed from people. So Maroon 5 and Adam Levine are now like three stages removed away from me, I guess. So let's see. Jacques says, "Do you have a beautiful way of describing everything in Afrikaans, don't we?" Yeah, you do. It's funny. Here's the irony, Jacques. Afrikaans pronunciation can be quite brutal for the untrained ear, especially for an English speaker. When you hear someone speaking Afrikaans, particularly folks on the high veld, of the genuine Boers out there, it's a bit tough on the ears. But especially when Afrikaners speak in English, they have the most amazing accent. It's truly something awesome. It's a nice thing to listen to and behold. But Afrikaans music is amazing. I wrote an article on LinkedIn about a year and a half ago, I think it was, maybe it's a little bit longer ago, about the golden age of Afrikaans music, talking about how the end of apartheid freed up the music community in South Africa, those who sing in Afrikaans, to give them an opportunity to sing differently and change their approach instead of just singing what we would call in German Heimatlieder, or I don't know how to say that in English. Heimat means home, but it's more than that. It has a very specific meaning to it in German. So for Afrikaans, these would be what I call Heimatlieder. So back in the day when I would hear Afrikaans music, I would only hear things like Die witste Sand ist die Kapse Sand, die mooiste Zee is die Zuide Zee, things like that. But now you have all kinds of music. You have Robbie Wessels with Macarena Mambo. You have Snotkop with all of his crazy songs, Raak voor mij rustig. He's hilarious. Yeah. And then you have, of course, Afrikaners have this habit of singing in country music too. Quite popular Afrikaans country musicians. So that's always interesting too. It's a fascinating genre. It's a fascinating group of people, and they have quite talented musicians. And so I hope that folks will be able to tune in here at 1 o'clock, 7 p.m. in South Africa and Botswana to hear Giselle's concert today. and I can give it to you for a really good price. No super chat begging here. No, hey Edu, no super chat begging. No asking anybody to become a member. Absolutely, totally. It will cost you 0 rand, 0 shekels, £0, $0, €0. Absolutely free. That is the best price possible. Usually for absolutely free, you don't get very much, but you will get a fantastic concert here. You will truly, I think you'll enjoy it. Even if you're not a fan of the genre, she's an entertaining performer, and it should be very interesting. So he may be running a few promos to talk about, she's a tourism spokesman for Swakopmund in Namibia, so maybe that stuff will be running, but that's a small price to pay for a free concert, especially on a Friday evening for those of you in Africa. With those of us here on the East Coast, it'll be a break in the afternoon. Given that so many people are on lockdown and unable to go to work, it's really not a big deal. You're not missing out on too much. So you'll get an opportunity to watch us over the internet. We haven't broken the internet yet, despite the fact that 6 billion people are locked down like inmates. But we've certainly tried to break the internet with Zoom and Skype, live streaming, videos, Netflix, Hulu. The world is trying to break the internet, and it's proving to be more durable than we expected. So that's good news. Let's see. Okay, Jacques says, especially the Germanic sounds. Yep. Did you go to DLI learn? No. Okay, actually, so let me explain how I got the languages. All right, so obviously English, I count English because I grew up speaking it. It's my mother tongue. It's my native tongue. Even though it's not native to this land, we adopted it early in our history. And so English is my first language. I self-taught myself at German. I would go out, went to the clubs, met Germans, traveled all the time when I first arrived in Germany in the 1980s. And within 3 or 4 months, I was speaking it pretty well. Then later took evening classes with the University of Maryland to get some credit, some academic credit to finish my university degree. And so I learned the grammar of German, which proved to be absolutely essential. The 2 classes that I took with the University of Maryland in 1984 and 85 were absolutely unbelievably invaluable, and the instructors were fantastic, and I learned a lot. And from there, I became fluent in German, and then later went back to university, and I studied German. It was supposed to be a double major, but I was 2 classes short of getting the full major, so I wound up with a minor in German. And at times, in many parts of Germany, I've been mistaken for being German based on my accent. It turns out that when I speak German, I use colloquialisms, which are unconsciously in my head from the Rhineland-Pfalz area, and also from Frankfurt. And so I've been asked if I'm from Frankfurt or from Hanau. So at once I thought that was an insult. I was like, wait a second, I don't want to be from there. And then I realized that it was actually a compliment, that someone thought that I actually spoke German pretty well. So yeah, so German was my second language. So that gives me 2. In the mid-1980s, in order to better understand what was happening in South Africa, I wanted to learn Afrikaans, especially after I learned German. So more towards the late 1980s, less than the mid-80s, but by about 86, 87, I was trying to learn Afrikaans. And so I bought a few textbooks, and then the most useful textbook I found is that on my way back on active duty after I finished university in 1989, I drove across the country on a big vacation, and I wound up in Los Angeles and went to the campus of UCLA, went through their bookstore. I know, that's very geeky. Yeah, what do I do on a vacation? Go to a bookstore. True story. I do it all over. When I'm in Germany, I go to bookstores and buy books in German. Anyway, South Africa, I load up my suitcase full of books each time I go there. Anyway, so I was in the bookstore at UCLA, and I found a book on Afrikaans because they were teaching Afrikaans at UCLA. So I bought a couple textbooks on Afrikaans there, and that really helped me out a lot. Now, I never claimed to be able to speak Afrikaans. In fact, my most commonly spoken sentence in Afrikaans is "Ik praat nie Afrikaans nie," because people get too fast for me, and you have to spend time around Afrikaners when they speak, and they've got that accent, so you can discern it. But I do listen to it. I can read it, and I understand Afrikaans. So anyway, it's if you speak German and you speak English, you can learn Afrikaans. You can learn Dutch easily, and you can learn Afrikaans, which is not that far removed from its origins in Dutch. It's antecedent roots. So that's English, German, Afrikaans. When I was back at university, I knew that I wanted to become a foreign area officer, a regional specialist for Africa. Based on what I'd learned as a young enlisted soldier, I knew that as an officer, this is something I wanted to do. So what happened was, I decided that I needed a language. Well, the languages, I wanted a lingua franca, something I could use in more than one place. Like learning Xhosa is fine, but you're going to use it in South Africa, and that's it. Nobody else speaks the language. So it's lovely, wonderful. If you're in South Africa, you can use it, but you can't use it elsewhere. So there are several lingua francas around the world. Hey, Justigos, including Drihan's there. Hey, evening, Drihan. Good to see you. Michelle, miss anybody else? So I wanted lingua franca. Well, I didn't want to learn Arabic. It just didn't appeal to me. I said, I'll never spend any time in that part of the world. Well, little did I know, serving in uniform, I would spend a lot of time in that part of the world later, much to my chagrin. Nonetheless, I didn't want to learn Arabic. That left French as a lingua franca. I didn't really care for France. The few times I've been there, the folks weren't that friendly, so I thought I'd pass. And then I looked at the other ones, and that left Mandarin. I had a roommate as a freshman at university, and he studied Mandarin. It just gave me headaches listening to him. I'm like, China, I don't want to learn this. Bunch of communists. That was then. And it's still today, communist. So that didn't leave many languages. And I wanted to go to Africa, and not surprisingly, but a good enough, Ohio University, where I was a student, had a Swahili program. So after the first week of the term in my senior year, we were on a quarter system, so 3 academic terms during the academic year, and then a summer session makes 4 quarters. So it was really like a trimester, but 3 quarters. Anyway, so I enrolled after the first week, went to class, sat down. The instructor was from Ohio State, so he drove down the 75 miles, 110 kilometers to give this class each week, and it was every day. Which is unusual. Normally language classes are 4 days a week, but this was 5 days because it was total immersion. So I sat in the class for Kiswahili, and I walked in, and the students in class, they'd all been there. You could add classes up to a certain date each term, and after the first week, you'd still have a class. So I added the class, and you just catch up. Well, it was very difficult. They were all speaking Swahili. I had no idea what they were saying. And so the instructor looked at me and asked me my name, and I looked at him like, huh? I don't know what you're saying, man. What are you saying? Anyway, but they refused to answer in English. So you eventually, because it just keeps getting repeated, you pick it up from context and you figure it out. So after a couple weeks, I was speaking rudimentary Swahili. I took Swahili the entire year. It was fascinating. I really enjoyed it. And it was a lingua franca that I could use in Africa that could be spoken in more than one place. So it was really cool. And then in the summertime, I'd asked the Army can I come on active duty when I graduate in June? That way I have a job and don't have to worry about scrambling to get money to pay for my rent and food and things like that. Or can I come in January? That way I got some time to get some work done. Well, what did the Army do? They decided I'd come back on active duty at the end of September, right smack in the middle. So that left my summer free, and I didn't have much in the way of work. I was working at UPS, the United Parcel Service, making pretty good money. But I decided to use my veterans benefits to enroll in graduate studies. So I took graduate credit and took an entire summer, 3 months, intensive Swahili, 5 hours a day speaking Swahili. So in 1989, I was fluent in Swahili. Jina langu ni mimi anakaa Duisburg. Mbuzi wawili, the bad goats. Yes, that's something I'll never forget from my Longman primary school primers. Mbuzi wawili, the bad goats who are chewing the clothes in the clothesline. So that gives me English, German, Afrikaans, and then Swahili. And so that leaves other languages. Later on, I lived in Botswana, and they speak Setswana, which is essentially the same language as Tswana, spoken on the other side in South Africa. So I started learning Tswana so that I could be more effective in Botswana. And so I don't speak particularly well, and I don't read particularly well, but I get by, at least in the main things. So I guess maybe conversational is the best you could say I could do there. So, I mean, obviously things like "Galabo," thank you, things like that. But I mean, a few sentences and some rudimentary stuff. And then Italian. I don't speak Italian at all, but I do understand it. I was stationed in Italy, and it's a Romance language, and I understand a bit. But so I never counted as one of the 6 languages I speak. Now, the one language I haven't mentioned is the only language that I was ever sent to school by anybody else, and that was French. The Army sent me to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, where I learned French. 6 months of intensive, 6 hours a day, French lessons by French instructors. It was quite an experience, to say the least. Anyway, I learned that in my late 30s, or mid 30s. So it's a bit late to be learning languages, particularly language like French, in which they write letters, but they don't use them. That's a little frustrating. So, but if you know the history of the etymology of the language, it makes sense. A lot of folks don't realize that French is actually originally a Germanic language. The Franks are a German people who came from east of the Oder River in what is now Poland, Pomerania, Silesia area, that part of Germany, and now part of Poland. The Franks came; they crossed the rivers, and so you have Frankfurt in the east, and you have Frankfurt in the west. Furt, F-U-R-T, Furt, Frankfurt is a fording, a crossing site. So you have Frankfurt on the Oder, which is in the east, and you have Frankfurt on the Main in the west. This is the Frankfurt we know, where Rhein-Main Air Base is, and where we have we have the main airport in Germany. So those are the two Frankfurts, and they're called that because that's where the Franks, when they migrated westward, came through Central Europe. So they went and they eventually settled in France. And of course, it was a Germanic language with the harsh, the way we pronounce, like, you don't say Volkswagen, you say Volkswagen. So that was how they pronounced things. Well, then the Romans invaded eventually. And of course, the Romans brought Latin, they imposed it, and they colonized the Celts and the Franks. And over time, French became a Romance language, but it does have some antecedent roots from its Germanic days. And so there are some things in French that confuse even the French. They don't understand why they're that way. Well, it's a consequence of having been a Germanic language. Now, of course, famously, the Normans, who were actually Vikings, who kept burning Paris, and the French king had enough, so he gave them Normandy, the land of the Normans. And so they got that land so that they would quit invading Paris and burning it, sacking it. And so the Normans came in large numbers from Denmark, from Frisia in northern Netherlands, and from northern parts of Germany, and even a few Norwegians, and they settled there. And for the better part of a century, they by and large sent for their spouses, their wives, they picked them up from their home areas. So they were overwhelmingly, predominantly Scandinavian Viking by blood and DNA. But over the course of 100 years, they became French-speaking Roman Catholics. Yeah, imagine that. So the Normans, who were French-speaking Roman Catholics, eventually invaded England in 1066 at the Battle of Hastings. They won. They defeated Harold Godwinson after he had beat another Scandinavian forces way in the north of England, and then rushed to the south, and his exhausted army arrived there only at the last moment for Harold to have been killed on the battlefield and for everything to fall apart. It came that close, the Normans wouldn't have won. But the impact of the Normans winning with William the Bastard, my 34th great-grandfather, by the way, Harold Godwinson, also a 34th great-grandfather, the impact of that is that the Normans took over, not quickly, it took some time. They moved on, captured London, they eventually spread their control and took control of the country so seriously that by the year 1087, the Doomsday Book was created, and a survey was done of all the properties so that the Norman kings would know what they owned and didn't own, and who their subjects were. So they took over, and over the course of a few hundred years, English adapted as a consequence of the introduction of French, because the Normans spoke French, and it was part of the language of the court. So with English being the language of the court, the Normans, the Norman nobles who would lead things, the knights and those in charge and running government, they would speak in French. And of course, the Anglo-Saxons spoke a Germanic language, and over time it was changed. This is one of the reasons why English is so colorful. So in French, you have one word to explain many things. For instance, if you want to talk about pork, you have pork, P-O-R-C, that's it. It's the only word. But in English, we have pig, swine, pork chop. We have so many different words for how we use that. And that's a consequence of the influence of Anglo-Saxon, the original basis of the language, Old English, and that being affected by French from the Normans. And so we have a very diverse language as a consequence, but also at times we have words that don't look like they should be pronounced the way that they're spelled. We also have strange spellings where we have the French versions of spelling that are used in English. For instance, color, spelled C-O-L-O-U-R, still by the English, which is from French, and couleur is where it comes from. And then, of course, in America, we just simplified things and made it easier. Color, C-O-L-O-R. There you go. Anyway, but yeah, that's English changed. So I got a little bit off topic there, but I learned French. So English, German, Afrikaans, French, Setswana, Swahili, and I understand some Italian. Anyway, that's where the languages came from. That was a long discussion. I was asked the question, though. Let me go back and see where we're at here. So EduTube, 7 hours ago, new lines for breaking South Africans' lockdown laws. What will you pay? Oh, that's interesting. Come a long way. Wo ist der Bahnhof? Yeah. Well, that's a phrase every American soldier learned when they went to Germany for 60 years. Wo ist der Bahnhof? Yeah. Wo findet man die Mädchen? That's another one. So let's see. Christoph, hey, welcome, Christoph. Languages are always the primary tools to enable foreign service. Who knew? Then understanding the culture of those people, then having some kind of connection, then you might be converted. Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to reside in a place to be a subject matter expert on it. A lot of people think you do. I disagree. There are a certain number of people who just get human beings and understand culture and can empathize and figure it out. But certainly learning a language plays a big role, I think. Now, you don't have to speak a language to get people. I mean, I don't speak any languages that they speak in Uganda other than English, which is the official language, but there's many indigenous languages there that I don't speak. But nonetheless, I did understand Uganda when I was there and understood people. I could have understood them better if I understood the languages, but there's quite a few languages in Uganda, so that makes it a challenge. Let's see, what else? Okay, back to studies for you. Okay, Christoph, thanks. Yeah, the concert should be good. That's coming up in about an hour and 15 minutes, folks. That's the free live concert with Giselle, an exciting Namibian singer who's based in Pretoria these days. She'll be performing the concert live. It's a debut for her album, which is being released from her residence in Pretoria, streaming live on my channel. And it will cost you $1 billion. No, it costs you absolutely nothing. Free. $1 billion. No super chats, no e-begging. I'm not even monetized on my channel, so I can't even e-beg yet. Eventually, maybe I'll be able to e-beg on my channel, but I certainly can't do that on my YouTube channel at the moment because I'm not monetized. So no super chats. It's absolutely free to you, my subscribers, and those who tune in. And if you tune in and watch it, I ask you to become a subscriber. I think you'll find the content interesting on this channel, certainly thought-provoking. You may not agree with it, but I personally watch many things I don't agree with. I read publications that I find absolutely annoying. So if you find me absolutely annoying, still feel free to subscribe to the channel. You're welcome to do it. I do have guests. I have a weekly live stream, which is on Saturdays. And this Saturday, I'll have a guest from Nigeria who's a PhD candidate. And his specialty is geopolitics and security. We'll be talking about security issues in Nigeria, and not just the obvious that you know about, like Boko Haram, but also things like the pastoralist versus herders conflict that has been taking place in northern Nigeria for several years, the Niger Delta, piracy, oil bunkering, and other issues we'll be bringing up. So that'll be on Saturday. That'll be 11 o'clock. I've shifted the time because my time was scheduled at the same time that seems that Ronaldo Hose is doing a lot of his broadcasts. I don't want to interfere with his broadcasts. He has a loyal and devoted audience. Some of the members are actually following me as well. So mine will be 11 o'clock, which makes it 5 p.m. in Johannesburg, and 4 p.m. in Accra and Abuja. So that should be interesting. That's this Saturday. Anyway, so I'm doing a weekly stream. I do these stray voltage, these just, impromptu, let's do a live stream. Let's see who wants to get on, discuss some issues, talk about things. Anything is fair game here. I'll talk about anything you'd like to talk about. As you can see, I'm just talking about how I learn languages. That's kind of stray voltage. And then I do prepared videos on specific topics, either forward-looking about something that I think is going to develop or should be discussed. Like, for instance, I did a video on intellectual property and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement a couple months ago. That's on my channel. You can find it under the Talking the AU playlist. You can find it there. So I do things like that. But then I also do apropos, in-the-moment things about events. And so I'm going to come on later tonight after the concert and do another live stream, another stray voltage. But I will be talking about South African breweries and the possibility that they may be dumping 400 million bottles of beer. Yeah, that's right. 400 million. Think about that. Can you even picture 400 million bottles of beer in your mind? I mean, I can't. I got to have Starbucks break here. 400 million bottles of beer. Now, what's interesting about that is it says it's only going to cost them $8 million. So I'm not perfect at math, but if I put 8 into 400, that means a bottle of beer is only worth a few cents. But what do they charge you? How many rand when you go to the Shebeen, or you go to a bar, or you go to the package store and buy it? What are you paying? So let's see what else we got here. But I'll be talking about South African breweries and the impact of the inability to transport alcohol in South Africa, which is the current restriction taking place. That'll be in my stray voltage later on. I'll be talking about that, plus some of the impacts of what's happening to people here in South Africa. I found some interesting op-eds, one by Selo Ladiga, who's a social commentator, author, and the CEO of Patriotic Movement, a civil society organization that promotes patriotism in South Africa. Interesting commentary on his part. And then also another one about the National Coronavirus Command Council, a nebulous organization at best that many people are very confused about, including me. But is an article by Pharrell Hafaji. This one's from yesterday. And I'm going to be talking about that. Also, some commentary here from The Guardian. This will be on my stray voltage after the concert later today. And I'll be talking about some human touching points here. This is an article from Jason Burke, who's based in Johannesburg, from 2 days ago, talking about the impact of this. Just let me give an example here. This is one comment by a South African. So, my dad is 73, and I don't think he'll get good treatment if he gets the virus. I'm very anxious, and the whole family depends on me. So if I'm sick and pass away, they'll have nothing. By a gentleman named Dubé. And so I'll be talking about things like that. Yeah, it's the human aspects of the lockdown, the measures beyond the economic impacts now and what it means for the future are all things that really need a lot of attention. We talk a lot about anger over government action and inaction, but also folks should be paying attention to the human dimension of this, and I think that's important. So let's see what else. More money making. Who's got money making? What's that? Doc Breaker, hey, I like to have some fun with other Germanic languages by pronouncing Hattengrund and Hattengrund and the Grün Grasgrund down. Oh, good God. That's why I can't speak Afrikaans. I can understand it, but I can't speak it. Ooh, that's hard. Yeah. Intentionally exposing another person to COVID, 5,000 Rand fine. Well, okay, gosh, give me a break. They've just made it a misdemeanor to intentionally infect someone with HIV in California. Can you imagine that? This past year in California, these boneheads in the legislature and the governor signed a bill which reduced intentionally infecting someone with a life-altering and, in many cases, a death sentence eventually. Yes, I know you take antiretrovirals, but antiretrovirals are toxic to your body. It's not something you want to take. So giving somebody HIV intentionally is not right. And the California legislature and the governor reduced it from a felony to a misdemeanor. So you can drink drive and go to jail, but you can intentionally give someone HIV and pay a fine or serve no jail time. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, so COVID-19, people are losing their mind about what's going on with that. Trust me. Anton, a function in Centurion. What's going on in Centurion? I missed that, Michelle. What's going on in Centurion? I know Centurion. I stayed there. Nice place between Pretoria and Joburg in the Highveld. Yes, stayed at the Protea and shopped in the Centurion Mall there a few times. And also, that was a place I stayed when I went to the FIFA World Cup in Loftus-Versfeld in 2010 to watch Cameroon play against Denmark. I rooted for Denmark, and the back of my jersey was completely soaked from the idiot with his vuvuzela standing behind me the whole time, blowing in that annoying device. Had a headache. Game was fun, but I was at Loftus back under the overhang, so the sound just reverberated, didn't go anywhere. If I'd been in the open, it wouldn't have been so bad. But yeah, I hate the vuvuzela. A terrible invention. Sorry, South Africa. You need a white cat to make that believable. Make what believable? Fly Emirates. You guys got some random stuff here. I'm missing the chat. What's going on? This is hilarious. Jessica says, I dropped from one of the main engineers at my small company to a driver engineer, 35 people working down to 4. Ouch. So you still have a job. Yep. There may be a lot of happy fishes in the rivers and sea after dumping that beer. I don't know about that, Christoph, but 400 million bottles of beer. Okay, so if we do that stupid song we did as kids, 400 million bottles of beer on the wall, 400 million bottles of beer, how long would it take us to sing that? About 6 months to get through that? Jeez, that's insane. And it says, I left a project with 3 people. It took 6 months. New to the new BE team of 37. It took 8 years. Yeah, okay. We're not going to get into BE, but you guys can talk about the chat if you want, because BE is definitely something that can spend a lot of time on. Hole in the ground and green grass grow around it or grow. Doc Breaker says the Wisconsin Dairy Alliance have been urged to dump almost 2.7 million gallons. Oh, I did not see that, Doc Breaker. I'll have to take a look at that. I wonder why that is. Is it because they can't get it to market, or people have reduced their milk consumption? I was out getting things yesterday, and in the wholesale store, we have Costco, we have Sam's Club, which is part of Walmart chain, but a big warehouse, and then we have something called BJ's. And BJ's is another chain. It's a smaller one. Anyway, I was at BJ's yesterday and was out moving about and around. And I went to Giant, which is kind of like Tesco in the UK, or Safeway in California, Kroger's in the Midwest, or Pick and Pay in South Africa. It's a big grocery store. So Giant, which is actually owned by a Dutch company, Royal Ahold. Anyway, yesterday was the first time I felt like an actual lockdown on any of the trips I've ventured out. There was very little traffic going around. But the shelves in BJ's were actually not full, but restocked. I've been there several times in the past 2.5 months of lockdown, and the shelves in the freezer section were always bare. But this time there are actually some frozen food in there, so I'm surprised that milk is being dumped. I don't know why that is. 5,000 Rand. Let's hope you survive COVID-19 to be able to pay the fine later. Yeah. Oh, Michelle, you saw Snotkop in Centurion? Oh, my gosh. That must have been awesome. That was, he's, I saw that he has a concert. I don't know if it was an online concert or if it was an ad for a concert later in the year, but it's 49 Rand for a concert. That's like $3 for US to go to a concert or watch it online. That's a dirt cheap deal. Yeah, Snotkop just rocks. He's amazing. His lyrics are hilarious. He's got a real talent. He's really cheeky and funny. I really like Snotkop. He's awesome. Let's see. Don't worry about the normal people in SA who are not rebellious. Do not. Oh, the vuvuzela. Yeah, I don't like the vuvuzela. Rebellious, got it. If they dump that beer, I'm going to be sweaty. Well, just make sure, EduTube, that you're not a surfer. I have a little surfing paddle out there with you if you're canoeing, because you could be arrested for being a violent and dangerous criminal, subjecting the public to potential infection. Yeah, okay. Anyway, Ramaphosa released 19,000 low-key prisoners. Well, welcome to our world here in the United States, and in virtually every state, or at least in many states, we've seen the release of those in prison to protect them while the government arrests citizens who pay taxes, law-abiding, trying to provide for their families for running a business. That's right. That's right. For those who paid attention to what happened in Texas, that lady has been released from prison now as a consequence of the attorney general and the governor intervening, and that pompous, arrogant judge released her. Yeah, I don't know if his appointment is a permanent lifetime appointment, but I certainly hope not. A lot of judges in the state and local level have to run for election, and hopefully if he runs for election, people remember his behavior and make him pay a price for it. Yeah, Shelley Turner, is that her name? I'm trying to remember, but the woman in Texas who was put in jail for running her business. So they release felons, child molesters, rapists, and even some murderers have gotten out in some places. They're releasing criminals, felons, into society to protect them so that they will not be endangered by COVID-19 while arresting a law-abiding citizen who pays taxes and employs people. They put that person in jail, exposing her to it. Much like the situation in Cape Town area in which the young couple was arrested because their toddler was throwing a tantrum and ran out into the sand. So they went to pick the child up. So the police harassed them, arrested them, took them down to the station where the police weren't wearing masks themselves and exposed them potentially to COVID-19. A 21-month-old toddler, I think she's 20-month-old toddler, maybe 16 months, and the parents. Now, the girlfriend, the partner, is a legal immigrant to South Africa with an Eastern Bloc name, Sretnova or something like that. So I don't know if she's Czech or Russian or whatever, but she's married, or not married, but she's a partner with a South African. They have a child, and they were taken to the station, treated like they were felons, and exposed to these things, and they didn't want their child stuck in this police station, so they asked the police if they could call a relative to come collect the child. The police threatened them and said, anyone that comes to collect the child will be arrested for violating the curfew. It's just or the lockdown is absolutely insane. The power trip that, and it's a shame because there are millions of wonderful, devoted, hardworking law enforcement security officials the world over, military personnel who are put in an untenable situation, but we've got some people that just can't handle stress and are not well suited for this task, and that's unfortunate. So that's a situation. It's just really sad. That story in Cape Town just really broke my heart. I don't know what's going on there. And the woman in Texas, some people were like, that's what you get. You're arrogant. You're just showing off. You're showboating. You want attention. Maybe she was, but I saw it more as a case the woman was frustrated, and the governor was lifting the lockdowns against businesses today anyway. But this arrogant judge, because she refused to apologize, he said she was selfish, and she said, no, I'm not selfish. And she was respectful. She said, I'm just trying to feed my children. The people that work in my hair salon are contract workers. They can't qualify for this relief as a business from the government because they're independent contractors, and so they're starving. Many of them are skipping food so that they can feed their children. And so because she's compassionate, she reopened her business, and of course they locked her up. Ugh, it's just insane. This is like reading Animal Farm and 1984 and all these other strange George Orwellian books about the totalitarian state. I want the V mask, but I'm afraid I'll get hit with a copyright strike. So I want to wear the V mask because this is V. This is what we're talking about. This is insane. What else we got here? Go swimming. Ramaphosa to release 19,000. Thanks for learning Afrikaans. The way you say Franschhoek is delightful. Well, thank you, KMH. I don't know if that's for Kim. Franschhoek. Yeah. It's probably not correct, but it's the way I pronounce it. Listening to people, that's a beautiful spot. Absolutely amazing. If I had been a French Huguenot and I had arrived there, I wouldn't have gone any further either. I don't care how many Khoi and Sam were around. If I was getting along with them, I wasn't getting along with them. I would have gone to Franschhoek and I would have just stopped right there. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. Between there and Paarl, and then of course if you go further west to Stellenbosch, that entire valley and that region and that pasture, there's absolutely stunning, wonderful, wonderful place to be. I can understand why people, but I also understand why the Dutch speakers who later became Boers and then Afrikaners, when the English landed in Cape Town, they enough of this nonsense, and they picked up stakes and went further east and further east, running into the Xhosa. And then the heck with that, and then further north up into the Free State and the Transvaal, and even on beyond that into Bechuanaland, which became Botswana, and even the Doorsland trekkers. For those who don't know, the Doorsland trekkers were a group of Boers who migrated through the Kalahari, through the Kalahari, in an effort to get to Angola to settle. And a tragic story, kind of like the Donner Party, in which so many people died. That's a historical settlement group that migrated caravan from the U.S. across the mountains and got stuck in the mountains. It was terrible. They were resorted to cannibalism. But the Doorslandtrekkers, or the Thirstlandtrekkers, went through the Kalahari, not at a good time. Large numbers of them died. One group of the Doorslandtrekkers got to eastern Namibia, outside of the Kalahari, and they had to spend a full year resting and recuperating and surviving on the generosity of the Bushmen and others who lived around there. And then some of them eventually continued on and settled into Angola. And there were actually Afrikaners or Boers living in southern Angola farming in the early part of the 20th century. They were relocated at the end of the First World War from Angola by the Portuguese and the South Africans to Namibia. Some of them went back to South Africa. And so many of those folks were originally part of the Doorslandtrekkers. But a tragic story for those who aren't aware of it. Interesting Afrikaans history there. So 400 million bottles of beer on the wall makes a long road trip. Yes, it does. They still celebrate Bastille Day in France. Yeah, they do on the 12th of July. Absolutely right. Yep. I think it's the 14th of July, isn't it? Isn't that the Bastille Day? I think it's the 14th. I don't know why they'd say celebrate on the 12th. Christoph says, I'm an advocate for hard labor and ratio depending on the crime to serve the law-abiding citizens. Okay. Not a fan of the death sentence. Easy way out for those taking life of others. Yeah, I guess. So Michel Jardine says, my ancestors on my mom's side were French Huguenot and settled in France. Yeah, okay, there you go. Absolutely. And of course, this is the reason why we have wine in South Africa. The French Huguenots, included amongst them were wine producers who brought their skills. You know, for those who don't understand the history of the Huguenots were French Protestants. They were Calvinist. And what happened is that they were given religious freedom in Catholic France by the king in 1590. He issued something called the Edict of Nantes, named after the French city of Nantes. And so the Edict of Nantes gave French Huguenots, Calvinist Protestants, religious freedom and rights that they were protected. Many of the French Huguenots were the elites, the talented, the people with skills, the educated, in many cases wealthy. Well, in 1685, not even a full century later, the Edict of Nantes was revoked by the French king because the French king was jealous of the money, the resources, the influence, and power that the French Huguenots had, even though they were a minority in France. And as a consequence, when the Edict of Nantes was revoked, French citizens went on a bloodletting. French Huguenots were drugged from their home by their neighbors and by others who were jealous, murdered in the streets, women were raped, their property burned, their things taken. The Huguenots fled by the tens of thousands, those who could get out, those who weren't murdered by French Catholics. And many of them settled in two major places. One place they went to was what was then known as the Spanish Netherlands, Holland, the Netherlands. And the other group, about 50,000 of them, actually eventually settled in the area around Berlin. And that's because the the Prussian king, Frederick, invited them to come to live there because it was also a Protestant area. The Prussians were Protestants as well. So they were tolerant of the French Huguenots, and so they settled there. Now, how do we get them to South Africa? Well, the Dutch and the Flemish had all of these French Huguenots suddenly in their midst, speaking French, and what are we going to do with these people? They can't just hang around. So they encouraged them to settle in other places, and someone got the bright idea that they should go to the Cape of Good Hope. And so starting after 1680, especially after 1685, I think 1688 was one of the major groups that arrived, French Huguenots started to arrive in the Western Cape. And many of them moved a little bit further east, and they settled into the French corner, Franschhoek, and around Paarl and even Stellenbosch. And they started introducing grapes. And we had our first bottle of wine, which was bottled in 1688 or 1689 by Simon van der Stel in Stellenbosch, if I'm not mistaken. And that started the French wine, or the South African wine industry as a consequence of Huguenots arriving. Now, there are other folks who were vintners who came from other parts of Europe who contributed to that later on, but the nascent beginnings of that started with the French Huguenots. And so there you have a little bit of history on those folks. Yep, beautiful part of South Africa. Anton LaRue says, do you think many Americans still view us as racist? View what, white South Africans? If that's your question, Anton, I don't know. I don't know that everyone ever saw it that way. If you mean Afrikaners, I think you're talking about Afrikaners. Perhaps some people do that. But I mean, you look around South Africa, you see an awful lot of black South African elites who seem to think that Afrikaners are racist. Are there racist Afrikaners? Of course. Are there racist Xhosa? Of course. There are idiots in every grouping around the world. It's just a consequence of life. Anyway, but I don't think that that by and large people view white South Africans or even Afrikaners in that light these days. What they do see is they see South Africa through a prism of 1984, the Rainbow Nation, the end of apartheid, multiracial, democratic, market-based economy, and honest governance. And almost none of what I just said is still true about South Africa today, unfortunately. Ooh, some tone just went through and blew out my eardrum. I have sensitive hearing, so I hear odd pitches at times. Well, it is 12:04 now. Let me see what else we got over here, because I'm going to have to drop off shortly to go do the test for the concert. That's why I say the ratio of crime committed, the murderers and rapists need some other forms of punishment. Yes, so that they suffer, I think, is Christoph's point. Michelle says Franz was... Yeah, Franz Hoek. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. That's for the Dutch for French corner. Yep. French Huguenots came to Cape Good Hope and as well. Yeah, some came to the USA as well. That's correct. Absolutely. And England also got French Huguenots, which is a little known. It's not as well known. Did you know that the first Japanese language classes for major indoor league soccer were taught at DLI? I did not know that, but I'm not surprised. Christoph says, obviously, a difference between accidents and deliberate crimes, not a one-page in World War II. Okay, folks, it is 12:05. I want to thank you all for tuning into my Stray Voltage live stream. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop off and I'm going to go prep for the concert. If you can come back at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1900, 7 p.m. Johannesburg time, and join us for Giselle's live debut concert from Pretoria on my channel. I welcome you back. I hope you can tune in for that. Thanks for tuning into this live stream, this Stray Voltage. I'm sorry I have to drop off now, folks, but I really do need to drop off and prep so that I make sure my phone is blowing up. I've got messages here, and I think that is my contact. The producer for Giselle wants to make sure that we're setting up. So I'm going to close it here. Thank you all for tuning in. We've been on for about 42 minutes. And again, after the live stream later today, late this afternoon here in the U.S., late in the evening in South Africa, I will come back on with another Stray Voltage stream, and I'll be talking about events in South Africa and here in the United States. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Really, if you're not a subscriber, please go ahead, feel free to push that subscription button down there. Sign up for the channel that way and push the notifications bell icon so that you get notifications on my live streams and my prepared videos. And if you have comments, please put them in the comments. I read them all. As long as they're not abusive, I'll address them if it's appropriate, answer questions if I can. And then also give me a like on this video. Likes drive viewership. I'm getting more and more subscribers in part because people are liking the videos. You don't have to like what I say, but if you like the video itself, the content, the discourse, that's important. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Christoph says, then they met Afrikaner people and find a different... Okay, all right. Okay, folks, thanks a lot. We're going to catch you at 1300 and 1900 in Johannesburg here shortly for Giselle's live debut. Thanks a lot, and I'll catch you all later. Hang in.